I expected to spend Thanksgiving weekend watching the Flames game with my kids. I expected laughter over turkey dinner, maybe some good-natured arguing about who made the better stuffing. Instead, I found myself sitting alone in my Calgary living room at 11:47 p.m. on October 9th, staring at an iPad screen that shattered every assumption I'd ever had about my family. My name is Robert, though everyone calls me Bob. I'm 62 years old, and I spent 38 years building a contracting business from nothing. Started with a used pickup truck and a toolbox my father left me. Ended with a company that built half the new developments in Airdrie. I sold it 2 years ago for enough money that I'd never have to worry again, and more importantly, enough that my 3 kids would never have to struggle the way I did. My wife Margaret died 5 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. 18 months from diagnosis to funeral, and I watched every single day as the strongest woman I'd ever known withered away to 93 pounds. The kids were there at the end. Sarah, my oldest at 37, Michael at 34, and Jennifer, who just turned 31. They held her hands, they said their goodbyes, and afterwards, I made myself a promise. I promised Margaret I'd take care of them. Make sure they never had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries like we did when we were young. Make sure their kids, my 4 grandchildren, could go to university without crushing debt. So I paid off Sarah's mortgage, helped Michael with his down payment, set up rests for all the grandkids. When Jennifer's husband lost his job, I covered their expenses for 7 months until he found something new. I thought I was being a good father. Turns out, I was just being an idiot. It started innocuously enough. Sarah and her husband Tom came over for dinner that Wednesday. She'd called asking if they could drop by, said she wanted to discuss something important. I made my signature chili, the kind Margaret used to love, and set out some beer. Tom likes Alexander Keith's, so I'd picked up a case. They arrived at 6:30, right on time. That should have been my first warning sign. Sarah's never on time. She inherited her mother's chronic lateness, usually showing up anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes behind schedule. But that night, 6:30, sharp. We made small talk over dinner. How were the kids? Fine. How was Tom's job at the oil company? Stable, thank God, especially with prices what they were. How was I managing the house on my own? Getting by, I told them. The lawn guy came every 2 weeks, and I'd finally figured out how to work the new dishwasher Jennifer had insisted I needed. Then, over coffee, Sarah cleared her throat in that particular way that meant she'd rehearsed what came next. Dad, Tom and I have been talking. We're worried about you. I set down my mug. Worried? Why? You're here all alone in this big house. 4 bedrooms for 1 person. It's too much. I manage fine. But for how long? Tom leaned forward, his elbows on my kitchen table. No offense, Bob, but you're not getting any younger. What happens if you fall? What if you have a health issue? I laughed. Actually laughed. I'm 62, not 92. I still curl twice a week. I walk 5 kilometers every morning. And my doctor says I've got the blood pressure of a 40-year-old. Sarah reached across and patted my hand. We know. But we've been thinking. Maybe it's time to consider downsizing. Move into a condo, something more manageable. Maybe one of those nice seniors communities in Cochrane. Seniors communities? I pulled my hand back. Sarah, I'm not ready for that. Just think about it, she pressed. And if you did sell, the house is worth what, maybe $650? $700? That's a lot of equity just sitting here. There it was. Not concern, not love, equity. I kept my voice level. I'm not selling the house your mother and I bought in 1994. The house where you all grew up. Where I stopped myself. I'm not selling. She backed off after that, but the damage was done. I'd heard the calculation in her voice, seen the way Tom's eyes had lit up at 650, 700. Michael came by 2 days later, brought his wife Amanda and their 2 kids, supposedly for a casual visit. But halfway through the afternoon, while the kids were in the backyard, he brought it up. Sarah told me she talked to you about the house. She did. And I said, no, Michael. He nodded slowly. like he was dealing with a difficult client. Michael's a financial advisor, and sometimes he forgets I'm his father, not one of his portfolios. Dad, I'm not saying you should sell, but have you thought about what happens to it when you're gone? The tax implications alone. When I'm gone, I set down the hockey magazine I'd been pretending to read. I'm in perfect health. No one lives forever, and if something happens, if the house sits in probate, we're looking at legal fees, capital gains, estate taxes. It could eat up 40% of the value. We, not you, we. I've got a will, I told him. Everything's handled. But is it structured properly? Because Amanda's brother is an estate lawyer, and he says, I stood up. I think it's time for you to head home, Michael. Thanks for stopping by. He looked genuinely surprised, like he couldn't understand why I'd be upset. Amanda gathered the kids, and they left within 10 minutes. Michael didn't even say goodbye, just gave me this tight-lipped nod like I was the one being unreasonable. Jennifer was the last. She came over that Sunday with her iPad, said she wanted to show me photos from her daughter Emma's dance recital. We sat on my couch, swiping through pictures, and everything felt normal. My youngest, the one who'd always been closest to me, who still called every Sunday just to chat. Then her phone rang. Work emergency, she said. She had to take this. She went out to her car, left her iPad on my coffee table. That's when the notification popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't even looking at her screen, but the iPad was face up right there, and the banner notification was impossible to miss. Sarah family chat. Just talked to a state lawyer friend. If Dad remarries, we lose everything. My hand was shaking when I picked up the iPad. The screen was still unlocked. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was an invasion of privacy. I read it anyway. The group chat was called Estate Planning with a little money bag emoji. 3 members. Sarah, Michael, Jennifer. The messages went back 6 months. I scrolled to the beginning. Michael, Dad's been alone 5 years now. You think he'd ever date again? Sarah, God, I hope not. Remember how much Mom's medical bills cost. If he remarries and lives another 20 years, we'll get nothing. Jennifer, he won't remarry. He barely leaves the house, except for curling. Michael, still, we should keep an eye on it. Amanda says estate law is tricky. I kept scrolling. Every message made my chest tighter. Sarah, July 14th. How much do you think the house is worth? I'm thinking we could get $700K easy. Michael, July 14th. My guy says closer to $750K with this market. Split 3 ways. That's $250K each. Jennifer, July 14th. Plus, whatever's left from selling the business, right? Dad said he invested most of it. Sarah, July 14th. I asked him about his portfolio last week. He got all cagey. I think he's got at least $2 million. Michael, July 15th. Jesus, that's almost $700K each after taxes. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the iPad. Jennifer, August 3rd. Took Dad to his doctor appointment today. Doctor said his cholesterol is a bit high. Should we be worried? Sarah, August 3rd. High cholesterol at his age is pretty normal. Why? Jennifer, August 3rd. Idg. Just wondering how long we're looking at here. Michael, August 3rd. Jen, that's dark. Jennifer, August 3rd. I'm just being practical. We all have kids to think about. Emma needs braces, that's $6K. Sarah, August 4th. Tom and I want to redo the kitchen. If we knew when we'd have access to inheritance money, we could plan better. There were hundreds of messages. Discussions about my health, my spending habits, whether I was wasting money on trips to Banff, arguments about whether they should encourage me to get a reverse mortgage so they could access the equity sooner. Calculations about how to minimize taxes when I died. When, not if. Michael, September 12th. Dad mentioned he's thinking about taking a cruise next spring. Mediterranean, 3 weeks. Sarah, September 12th. How much is that going to cost? Michael, September 12th. He said around 15K. Jennifer, September 12th. That's our money he's spending. Sarah, September 12th. We can't say anything. He'll know we're watching. Michael, September 12th. Maybe we should start suggesting cheaper hobbies. Get him into gardening, or something. I heard Jennifer's footsteps on the porch. I set the iPad down exactly where it had been. Screen off. When she came back in, I was staring at the Flames game on TV, my face carefully neutral. Sorry about that, Dad. Work stuff. No problem, sweetheart. She picked up her iPad, scrolled through a few more photos with me, then headed home, gave me a hug at the door, told me she loved me. I said it back. Force of habit. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen with a bottle of Margaret's favorite Merlot, the expensive stuff I'd been saving. And I read through every single message in that group chat. All 463 of them. They discussed my funeral. Whether to do cremation or burial, purely based on which was cheaper. They debated which of my possessions were worth keeping and which should go to estate sale. Sarah wanted Margaret's china. Michael called dibs on my collection of vintage hockey cards. Jennifer wanted the grandfather clock. They'd already divided up my life, and I was still living it. The worst message came from September 28th, just 12 days ago. Jennifer: anyone else think Dad seems more tired lately? Sarah: he's 62. That's normal. Jennifer: I mean more than usual. He was winded going up the stairs at my place. Michael: should we be concerned? Sarah: concerned or hopeful? Michael: Sarah. Sarah: what? I'm kidding. Mostly. Jennifer: I feel bad saying this, but if something did happen soon, the market's really hot right now. We'd get top dollar for the house. Michael: let's just not talk about this. Jennifer: you're thinking it too. No one contradicted her. I closed the iPad, poured another glass of wine, stared at the wedding photo of Margaret and me hanging above the fireplace. We were 23 and 21, stupid in love, with no idea what was coming. The struggles, the late payments, the times we ate Kraft dinner for a week straight so we could make payroll, the joy when Sarah was born, the terror during Michael's emergency appendectomy when he was 7, the pride at Jennifer's university graduation. Where had I gone wrong? I thought about it all night. By the time the sun came up, I knew exactly what I had to do. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. Frank Morrison, same guy who'd handled the sale of my business. We'd known each other for 20 years, played in the same curling league. Bob, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I need to change my will. Sure thing. What kind of changes are we talking about? I told him. Everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Bob, are you sure about this? These are your children. I'm sure, Frank. Why don't you come in tomorrow? We'll talk it through properly. Tuesday afternoon, I sat in Frank's office overlooking 8th Avenue, and we went through it line by line. My estate, after the house sold and accounts settled, would be worth approximately $2.3 million. Under my current will, split 3 ways equally. Under my new will, Sarah Margaret Thompson. To you, I leave the sum of $1, for reasons you know well. Michael James Thompson. To you, I leave the sum of $1, for reasons you know well. Jennifer Ann Peterson. To you, I leave the sum of $1, for reasons you know well. The rest would be divided between 4 charities: the Alberta Cancer Foundation in Margaret's name, the Calgary Food Bank, the Hospice Calgary, and a scholarship fund for trade school students at SAIT. The kids will contest this, Frank warned me. Let them try. I'm of sound mind. I'm not under duress, and I have excellent reasons for my decision. Which are? I pulled out my phone, showed him screenshots I'd taken of the group chat messages. Frank read them, his expression darkening with each swipe. Jesus, Bob. Yeah, okay. This should hold up. But I have to ask, have you talked to them? Given them a chance to explain? Explain what? Explain how they were counting down the days until my funeral so they could sell my house? Explain how my health problems were an inconvenience to their kitchen renovation plans? Frank sighed. Fair enough. I'll draw up the new documents. You sure you don't want to sleep on it? I've done nothing but sleep on it for 3 days, Frank. I'm sure. I signed the new will on October 15th. Sarah called me that night. Hey, Dad. Just checking in. We haven't heard from you in a week. A week. I'd been radio silent for 7 days, and this was the first time any of them had reached out. I've been busy, I told her. Busy with what? You're retired. Doctor's appointments. Actually, getting some tests done. The pause on her end was loaded. Tests? What kind of tests? Just routine. Cholesterol was a bit high, remember? Oh, right. Another pause. Everything okay? We'll see. Doctor wants to run some more blood work next week. I could practically hear her mind racing. Were these tests expensive? Would they cut into the inheritance? Was I actually sick, or just being paranoid? Well, keep us posted, she said finally. Love you, Dad. Sure. I didn't say it back. Michael texted the next day. Sarah said you're having tests done? Call me. I didn't. Jennifer showed up at my door on Thursday with a casserole. Dad, you're worrying us. Sarah said something about health problems? I'm fine, Jennifer. Can I come in? I'm actually heading out, curling in 20 minutes. Oh, okay. She handed me the casserole. Well, call if you need anything. Will do. I threw the casserole in the garbage after she left. I know it sounds petty, but I couldn't stomach the idea of eating food made by someone who'd been calculating how much my death was worth. The messages in the group chat picked up after that. Sarah, October 16th. Dad's acting weird, really distant. Michael, October 16th. He won't return my calls. Jennifer, October 17th. I took him food, and he basically shut the door in my face. Sarah, October 17th. Maybe he knows? Michael, October 17th. How could he know? Jennifer, October 17th. I left my iPad at his place last week for like 10 minutes. You don't think? Sarah, October. Shit. Michael, October 17th. We don't know anything for sure. Just act normal. 3 days later, all three showed up at my house together. United front. I watched through the window as they walked up my driveway, serious expressions on all their faces. I let them in. Dad, we need to talk, Sarah started. About what? About whatever's going on with you. You're avoiding us. You're not returning calls. I've been busy. Doing what? Michael demanded. What's so important that you can't call your own children? I looked at each of them. Sarah in her expensive Lululemon outfit that I'd probably paid for. Michael in his suit from Harry Rosen, probably also on my dime. Jennifer with her designer purse, the one she'd mentioned wanting in the group chat because when Dad dies, I'm buying myself something nice. I've been thinking, I said carefully, about my legacy, about what I leave behind when I'm gone. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad. Jennifer's voice was soft, concerned. You're not sick, are you? We're all dying, Jennifer. Some of us just have more time than others. What did the doctor say? Sarah's hands were clasped together, knuckles white. He said I should put my affairs in order, make sure everything's handled properly. We can help with that, Michael jumped in. Like I said before, Amanda's brother is an estate lawyer. I've already handled it. You? What? I met with Frank Morrison last week, updated my will, made all the necessary changes. Everything's in order now. The relief on their faces was almost comical, like they'd been worried I'd leave everything to some girlfriend they didn't know about, or donate it all to the Humane Society. That's great, Dad, Sarah smiled. Really responsible. Can we ask? Michael hesitated. I mean, is everything divided fairly? Not that it matters, but it matters. I cut him off. And yes, Michael, everything is divided exactly as fairly as each of you deserves. They left soon after, satisfied. I watched them through the window again, saw them laughing as they walked to their cars, probably relieved, probably calculating their shares one more time. I gave them 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence, of not returning calls, of being mysteriously busy whenever they tried to visit. 3 weeks to wonder and worry and maybe, just maybe, feel a fraction of what I'd felt reading their messages. Then I invited them all to dinner. November 7th, 6 p.m. I made Margaret's roast beef, the one she used to make for special occasions. Set the table with her good china. Opened a bottle of wine that cost more than any of them knew. They all came. How could they not? When dear old Dad, who might be sick, who'd been acting so strange, invited them all for a family dinner. We ate. We made small talk. The grandkids, work, the Flames' terrible start to the season. Everything Painfully normal. Then, over dessert, Margaret's apple pie recipe. I pulled out my phone. I want to show you something, I said. I set the phone in the middle of the table, opened to the screenshots of their group chat. I watched the color drain from 3 faces simultaneously. I found these, I said conversationally, like I was discussing the weather 3 weeks ago. Jennifer left her iPad here, and a notification popped up. I know I shouldn't have read them, but I did. All 463 messages. Jennifer started crying immediately. Michael looked like he might throw up. Sarah just stared at the phone. Dad, let us explain, Sarah started. Explain what? Explain this one? I swiped to a message. That's our money he's spending. Or this one. If something did happen soon, we'd get top dollar for the house. Or my personal favorite, I found it. Held it up. Anyone else think Dad seems more tired lately? Concerned? Or hopeful? We didn't mean, Jennifer sobbed. You meant every word. I know, because you wrote it down. You created a group chat. You named it estate planning with a money bag emoji. And for 6 months you treated my life like an investment property waiting to mature. Dad, please, Michael reached for my arm. I pulled away. Don't, just don't. We were wrong. Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. We were so wrong, and I don't know how to make this right. You can't. There has to be something. There's nothing. I spent 5 years grieving your mother, 5 years trying to be both parents for you, even though you're all grown adults with families of your own. I paid off your mortgage, Sarah. I gave you $75,000 for your down payment, Michael. Jennifer, I supported your family for 7 months when Tom lost his job, and the whole time you were counting the days until you could cash out. We love you, Jennifer whispered. No? You love my money? There's a difference. I stood up, went to my briefcase in the hallway, came back with 3 envelopes, handed one to each of them. What is this? Michael asked. Open them. They did. Inside each envelope was a single piece of paper. This letter certifies that name is entitled to receive the sum of $1 from the estate of Robert James Thompson. For reasons they know well, the remainder of Mr. Thompson's estate, valued at approximately $2.3 million, will be distributed to charitable organizations as specified in his last will and testament, dated October 15th, 2024. The silence was deafening. You're giving away everything? Sarah's voice was barely audible. Everything except $3. One for each of you. But the grandkids, Jennifer started. The grandkids have resps that are already funded. They'll be fine. Better than fine. They'll learn that money isn't guaranteed, that they have to work for what they want, and that family means more than a bank account. Dad, please. Michael was crying now too. We'll do anything. We'll apologize. We'll make it up to you. You can't make this up. You can't apologize for spending 6 months hoping I'd die soon so you could renovate your kitchen. I walked to the door, opened it. I think it's time for you to leave. Dad, all 3 started. Now. They left. Jennifer was sobbing so hard, Sarah had to help her to the car. Michael looked back once, his face pleading. I closed the door. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, in the same chair I'd sat in 5 years ago when we brought Margaret home from the hospital for the last time, and I allowed myself to cry. The text started within an hour. Sarah, Dad, please call me. I'm so sorry. Please. Michael, I know we don't deserve it, but please talk to us. Jennifer, I can't believe what we did. I hate myself. Please, Dad. I blocked all 3 numbers. The emails came next. Long, rambling apologies. Explanations about stress and money worries, and how they'd gotten caught up in the wrong mindset. Promises to change, to be better, to prove they loved me. I deleted them unread. They showed up at my house. I didn't answer the door. They called Frank's office. He told them the will was ironclad and I was of sound mind when I signed it. Tom, Sarah's husband, tried to corner me at Tim Hortons one morning. Told me I was destroying his family, that Sarah hadn't stopped crying in 3 days, that their kids were asking what was wrong. Tell them, I said, picking up my double-double, that their mother learned a valuable lesson about counting chickens before they hatch. I sold the house on November 28th. Got $745,000 for it, well above asking. Moved into a 2-bedroom condo in Cochrane, one of those new buildings with a view of the mountains. Spent $285,000, paid cash. Put the rest into the charitable trusts. I didn't tell my kids I was moving. They found out when they drove by the old house and saw the sold sign. Christmas came. I spent it in Banff, at the Fairmont, watching it snow through the massive lobby windows while I drank hot chocolate that cost $18. It was the best Christmas I'd had in 6 years. My phone stayed silent. I'd changed my number. On Boxing Day, I went for a walk along the Bow River. The temperature had dropped to -20, and my breath came out in clouds. I thought about Margaret, about how she would have handled this, whether she'd think I was being too harsh. Then I remembered something she'd said near the end. We were in her hospital room, just the two of us, in the quiet hours before dawn. She'd been sleeping more and more, but that morning she was awake, lucid. "Promise me something," she'd whispered. "Anything. Don't let them take advantage of your kindness. You have the biggest heart of anyone I know, Bob. But sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness. The kids would never. Promise me." I promised. I kept that promise. It's been 8 weeks now, since that dinner. I've settled into my new place, made friends with my neighbors, a retired couple from Edmonton who curl at the same club. I've started taking photography classes, something I always wanted to do but never had time for. I'm planning that Mediterranean cruise for next spring, the one my kids thought was a waste of their money. Last week, I ran into an old friend from my contracting days. He asked about the kids. "We're not in touch much these days," I told him. "That's too bad. Family's important. So is self-respect. I don't know if my kids understand yet. Maybe they never will. Maybe they still think I'm being cruel, unreasonable, that I'm punishing them too harshly for what they probably view as harmless speculation. But I read those messages. I saw the emoji next to estate planning. I know what they hoped for, what they wished for. And I'm not dead yet. Frank called me yesterday. Told me Sarah had reached out again, begging for a chance to meet. Just to talk, she'd said. No expectations. "What should I tell her?" he asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. "Tell her," I said finally, "that I'm living my best life, that I wake up every morning grateful for another day, that I'm healthier now than I've been in years, and my doctor says I might live to 95. Bob, tell her I hope she lives that long too, that she has decades to think about what she did, decades to understand that people aren't investments, and fathers aren't ATMs. Tell her I hope she learns that lesson before her own kids start counting her money." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I made myself Margaret's roast beef, set the table with her china, poured a glass of that expensive Merlot, and I ate alone, in my new condo, with the mountain view I'd always dreamed about. I was 62 years old. I had my health, my freedom, and $2.3 million going to people and organizations that would actually appreciate it. For the first time in 5 years, maybe for the first time since Margaret died, I felt like myself again. Not a wallet, not an inheritance, not a ticking clock counting down to someone else's payday. Just Bob. And Bob was doing just fine.